of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Prior to today, Mr. Fields circulated to the commission members draft of last month's meeting minutes. Have those been reviewed, and is there a motion regarding approval?
I move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have an updated agenda for today that was updated yesterday. We had on our agenda previously requests by Lyft, Jump, and Bird to expand the number of SUMDs that they had been allotted under the pilot program. Each of those companies have requested deferral. Those requests have not been rescheduled yet, but notice will be given when that public hearing will be reset, and the requests will be considered. In granting the deferral, I'm aware that under the ordinance that the commission is to make recommendations by July 1 of this year to the City Council for changes to the ordinance, as well as implementation of our internal commission rules regarding regulation of the scooters. And I thought it would be a good time, using this time that we're planning to talk about expansion, to consider certain recommendations so we can get them on the agenda for next month. It's my understanding that we have an ability to promulgate rules that are consistent with the ordinance to help us regulate and follow the ordinance that the City Council has passed for the pilot program. And some of those rules might include restricting operation to certain hours, as well as considering increasing the utilization requirement, which is one of the criterion for whether or not a company can expand the number of scooters. So I'd like to see what the other commissioners think about making some rule recommendations for us to consider for next month, which we would need to have a formal public hearing on before we could actually change our rules. And then, of course, we can also talk about, right now, recommendations we might want to make to the City Council ordinance. We would not need a public hearing for that, but obviously we can't make changes to the ordinance. Those would purely be recommendations that would go to the City Council for them to determine if they'd like to make those changes. Obviously, they are expecting, and we're obligated to make some recommendations. We have under Chapter 12.62.100, we're obligated to conduct a study no later than July 1, 2019. Among the things that the study is to address were to determine the impact of SUMDs, as well as recommend changes to the ordinance and policies or practices Lastly, we're also to determine if the revenue generated by the fees of the SUMDs is covering the cost of permitting, administration, compliance, and most importantly, enforcement. And we're supposed to be talking about that, conducting a study, working with Mr. Fields, giving him input so that the MTLC can get that done by July 1. So in addition to possible rule changes of increasing utilization and maybe limiting hours of operation, there are other things that we can also consider doing. These would fall under the category of recommendations for changes to the ordinance. That would include requiring corrals for SUMDs as opposed to having them be parked on the side of a sidewalk or in an area out of traffic and away from ADA areas. But to address a number of issues regarding enforcing that, we could just bypass that altogether and require the use of corrals. Another thing that we might want to consider is recommending that there be put in the ordinance an additional fee that's charged to the operators per scooter, and that fee be a line item fee that those funds would be allocated to uses for enforcement, either hiring additional personnel through the Transportation Licensing Commission, or what I think which would be far more effective, providing additional resources to the Metropolitan Police Department so they can better enforce the ordinance and the laws governing the use of SUMDs. And we can talk about what makes sense there in terms of maybe even the amount of the fee. Lastly, I want to make sure that we consider an additional recommendation to the ordinance, which would be shortening the window time or even getting rid of the time that a company can correct an unlawfully parked scooter or to resolve a complaint involving a scooter. So if in conjunction with greater enforcement, if the MTLC or the police department determines that there is a violation, that they can act on it immediately and there not be this need to notify the SUMD operator that, hey, you've got a scooter that's knocked over, or you got a scooter that's blocking the right-of-way for sidewalk, or you've got a scooter that is in violation of the ADA requirements for the city. And so those are the things that I would like for us to talk about today, so we can get those properly on the agenda for next month. And then, of course, if others in the commission have suggestions to get on the agenda, I'm all ears to hear that as well. I think it's pretty clear that the ordinance we have right now is not well written, and it is not unfolding very well in practice. We as a commission, have very little discretion on the way the ordinance is currently written regarding expansion, in terms of whether or not to deny expansion. At least that's the way I'm reading the ordinance. You know, there's probably arguments that we could be more aggressive in our interpretation of the ordinance, but a probably more conservative interpretation would be that we don't have as much discretion as we do with the other industries that we regulate, such as the low-speed vehicles, the pedal carriages, the horse carriages, taxis. There is not a public need and necessity determination in the SUMD ordinance. That is maybe another thing we might want to consider making a recommended change to the City Council. one of the things that I know we're able to do under our rulemaking is to consider increasing the utilization. I'd mentioned that earlier. That might be one way to address that in the ordinance without having to get the council to approve it, and would give us a way to better determine a number one, a public need and a necessity, and also determine, issues regarding public safety. So I didn't mean to talk that long, but I certainly wanted to make sure this was brought before us today so we could get it on the agenda properly for next month.
Can I ask a couple of things of the staff? We were supposed to be getting data from these companies, correct? Is that data, is anybody able to deal with it?
The Metropolitan ITS Department is tasked with gathering the information and sharing that back with us. In a meeting I had with IT, there are some issues that they're working through because, again, what we're doing now would be 7 different companies with 7 different same kinds of data sets, but being delivered in different manners. So that's actually what IT is working through right now, as I understand it. I should have another report next week, but there was a series of meetings were supposed to be happening this week to work through and discuss those issues. We're also looking at a potential software package that we would be getting as a staff that would basically develop dashboards where that information, that some 6 or 8, whatever, a certain number of data sets would be available to us, like there it is. So they continue to work on that.
The other thing is, I thought about, is there any way we can look at, I know there's no best practice because this is so new, but other cities are dealing with it, Knoxville, Memphis. I heard some of the legislators from Memphis speak very highly about it, so I don't know what they're doing differently. But Portland's dealing with this. Portland did a really good survey of their riders where they found, for instance, 40% of them said they had used a scooter instead of a car, which sounds really high. But at any rate, is there any way to find out what other cities are doing, get some idea? Would, Municipal League or somebody have that info?
I'm not sure they would. We can certainly, I'd be happy to work with you directly to put together some data you'd like to gather.
Okay.
And we can certainly contact those other cities.
I tell you, when this was first written, if I remember correctly, it was originally written by the Planning Department. Is that your recollection?
I was not involved in the initial action.
There certainly were some folks from planning involved in the drafting process. I think it ended up being council-authored bill.
Okay, but I remember Peter was involved. Can we drag them into this and make them do some work?
Peter's part of our regular, we have Peter Bird from planning and Derek Haggerty and Jeff Hammond from Public Works, the engineering division. So we have a pretty extensive team in Metro working, trying to make sure we're getting this right, or trying to get it right.
Well, let's make them collect the data on other cities.
I'll certainly, I know Peter will want that aside.
I'm sure.
If he's watching, call.
Do you think we'll have that?
I know that they were also relying to some extent on NACTO.
Right, yes, that's what I remember, right. Yeah, NACTO.
Do you think we'll have that data before next month's meeting?
We will at least have parts of the data by next month in terms of looking at rides, the numbers, durations, and things like that. I'm confident we'll have that kind of data.
Is the data going to include who's using the scooters?
Well, who is an individually, no.
Or what type of people?
There are some, for instance, we know anecdotally already, we know that we're starting to see an uptick among riders in areas like Park and Ride, for instance, across between the bridges. We know that there's a little uptick around the bus station. We know there's an uptick around the Music City Stars. So from that, we are making an assumption that those sort of things are coming, that people are starting to use them either as convenience rather than walking, or not driving all the way to a parking garage and parking. We also or through the companies, and again, it's not an identifier, we can look at those people who are riding scooters frequently, and we can assume that if somebody's ridden a scooter 100 times since last September, that they're residents and they're using them on a frequent basis for basic transportation.
I was wondering, since it's a credit card that's used to activate the scooter, whether they were able to identify the geographical location of the
Yes.
folks using it.
Yes, they can identify starting areas, but through the GPS system.
Well, they identify starting areas, but are they able to identify the residents of the people using them?
Well,
Whether they're from Middle Tennessee or are they
The
from
data that they are
outside?
entitled to receive under the ordinance is required to be anonymized.
Even in terms of home location?
I mean, I would almost need to have an IT person answer that question for you, because I know that there is a lot of concern that if you get specific enough in, I'm sure how far I need to get.
well, I think it may actually be, I think they advised me actually getting closer to the microphone can cut that down on feedback. So
It's better to
actually
get closer?
speaking directly into
Oh.
the microphone should cut
Sorry.
down on that particular feedback.
Okay, I thought it was the opposite. But what I was saying is, like, I've been in the room in conversations where they were talking about if you get too much specific data that you actually can't identify who that user is. And so to truly anonymize it, you kind of have to aggregate data, or, so I'm not enough of an expert on that to give you an intelligent explanation.
One thing I'd like to add to consideration for the agenda next month is whether it's practical to require helmets to be used or provided by the companies.
So it's not required. What the ordinance currently says is that they are encouraged.
I'd like to know from the companies whether it's practical, because some of the advertising I'm seeing, the people are riding along on these yellow scooters wearing yellow helmets. And I haven't seen a yellow helmet in use yet. So the other areas is you talked about enforcement and trying to raise revenue, since we've heard from the police department that they do not have the resources to enforce scooters, the rules regarding scooters, particularly staying off sidewalks. I noticed that many of the scooters have on them an advertisement that says $1 to start it. I could see we could raise that fee, and perhaps the money could go to increase the bicycle patrol officers, because they may be in a better position to enforce scooter regulation than, say, the foot patrol or the people or the officers who are in the cruisers. And that's just a thought that maybe we could help to increase the number of officers who are on bicycles downtown to be able to enforce the scooter regulations. Otherwise, I thought the chairperson had a number of good ideas that could be put on there for consideration.
So we do have to be careful. The chair already touched on this, but of course there are limitations on what this are you sure?
I'm only repeating what the sound folks said.
There are limitations on what this commission can do. So obviously, anything that is explicitly addressed in the Metro Ordinance, the Code Chapter 1262, cannot be something that you can be inconsistent with. So for example, you couldn't ban the scooters altogether. That's not within this commission's authority. But, and where the ordinance does specifically speak to something, you can't make a rule that would be inconsistent with that. Like if the ordinance says helmets are encouraged, you can't make a rule that says helmets are required. There are other things, though, that the ordinance specifically delegated to this commission to make rules about, like hours of operation. So those are things where you can make a rule without having to go through council. With anything else, you would really just be making a recommendation to council.
I hope everyone who's emailing me about, sending me emails about banning scooters understands this commission cannot ban the scooters or the SUMDs. We are only authorized, as has been explained, to regulate them.
And Mr. Chair, one thing that was mentioned was surveying. One of the things that we haven't, I meet with the companies on a regular basis as a group. So one of the things over the months that we've been meeting, surveys is a part of what they do. So they are very cooperative and will be happy to, in terms we might not, we we won't know individually who they are, but they can certainly send surveys out to folks and asking specific questions about the way they use scooters, the way they would like to use scooters, and so forth and so on. So anything we would like to know, if the commission actually had certain questions they'd like to have asked, whether we could have it by June, I don't know, but if there were specific things that you wanted to ask, we'd certainly try to gather that and ask the companies to do a survey. So I'd be happy to work with them on that.
If I could go back to fees, if I remember right, there was a discussion about how much we can charge in fees based upon what it cost us to enforce it. Is that correct?
That is exactly.
So let's say we decide we need, 10 police officers. I mean, I don't know that we need 10, but is that sufficient to fulfill? Is it a state requirement, state law?
So it's kind of a state constitutional provision, I guess. So local government cannot tax, basically, except where they have been explicitly given authority to do so by state law. So there is a fine line between a tax is generally like a revenue generating initiative, I guess. So where we are running a program and charging a fee for it, if that fee is limited to recovery of our costs, then that is not a tax.
Okay.
That is something that we are just doing to fund the program itself.
So we have to
Our fees
find
should
out
be
what that
cost-based, yes.
revenue, what that cost would be, and then determine the fee based on that.
Yes. So I believe that the Department of Public Works is actually doing a cost study.
We've actually begun a cost study. For instance, at Public Works as a department, what we know who is dealing with it, who's not. Probably 40 to 50% of my time is dealing with it. So clearly 40 to 50% of whatever the metropolitan government provides for me, insurance, life insurance, salary, and everything else can directly be attributed to, and that's the same way with all the other industries. So what we're in the process of doing is putting together that kind of study and attribute it, and considering we haven't raised fees on many of our industry in a lot of time, they're probably going to be not only for scooters, but IT is spending a great deal of time on this as well. The police department, all of the time they're spending can be attributed to this as well. Legal's time, their paralegals' time. I'm told anything that touches it is potentially a reimbursable. It's not really called a reimbursable, but we could show that it's attributed to. If they weren't here, we wouldn't be doing it.
As part of the cost.
Well, I know
Right.
under the ordinance, I'm concerned about timing, and it maybe my concern is overblown because it sounds like you've already begun the cost analysis. But I know we're supposed to have that completed by July 1 so we can make the recommendations to City Council. And if there is any sense of urgency about making adjustments or amendments to the ordinance, then I want to do whatever we have to do to get that done by July 1.
Based on the timeline you've described and the fact that you have you're beginning with some thoughts, I think it's going to be very appropriate or very possible to get these kind of recommendations to the council and as a part of the report. The reality is part of the problem, not a problem, part of the challenge we have is some of the things that we need to report weren't a part of the ordinance until March. So we had actually asked that the report be pushed back to maybe October 1st to be able to give us more time to actually gather the data. So what I have suggested to council, to many of the council members, including the council sponsor, is that you may be getting an interim report that's going to report everything that we can report, but we may be coming back with additional information. And they were they're happy and would be very receptive to. We'll give them what we can on July 1, and if it's complete, wonderful. If it's not, we certainly can come back. We can report as often as you want to report.
We remain in the pilot until April.
Till April 1st next year, the pilot period.
Yeah.
Well, I think that would be great if we were able to supplement, but certainly by July 1, I would like for us to have support for our recommendations. Obviously, one of the things we're supposed to do is determine the impact of SUMDs, and without having statistical information, we're just basing it off anecdotal information and emails from citizens and whatnot.
But we'll be able to show usage and other kinds of statistics like that I think will at least be able to be a part of the report.
There's one other meeting, I don't know if this would have crossover interest, but I think it might. There is one other meeting occurring on June 4th that is really about Nashville's ADA compliance. But Nashville is undertaking an ADA self-evaluation. We're evaluating our own compliance. And the Mayor's Advisory Committee on Disabilities is meeting on June 4th in the Sunny West Conference Center at noon to have a public hearing on that draft self-evaluation. And it is a public hearing, and members of the public are entitled to come and speak and give their comments on that self-evaluation. And we anticipate that one of the issues that people may bring up is SUMDs or scooters in the public sidewalk and blocking accessibility in that context. So, I just thought I would mention that in case there's some crossover interest between people who follow the meetings of this commission and would maybe be interested in attending that. And that could provide us also with some feedback for the recommendations at the end of June as well.
And Mr. Chairman, also as a report back at the commission meeting, at the last commission meeting, you looked at the idea of doing a pilot for corrals for scooters. So we went back working with engineering and with planning, and we should be implementing a dozen corrals in an area that will be from Union Street to Demonbreun Street, from 2nd to 4th. We're able to go to get the proposals to actually put them together with delineators, very similar, I think, to the bike lanes we're using now, as well as painting on the actual pavement. And we're hoping in the next week or so we're going to be able to begin deploying those. That will give us a little additional information to be able to come back to you in June and say, hey, this is what we're seeing already. But what will happen is our 2 enforcement officers, as well as working with traffic and parking enforcement folks, and the downtown. I'll be meeting with the commander downtown on Tuesday. What we're going to do is do everything we can in that particular area to heighten all of the patrol to get to find compliance and push compliance into those corrals. Assuming they work there and they're workable, then we could go throughout the city. So that's based on your request to do that. We should have a good report for you, or at least a report for you.
Are we getting any input from the police department about the cost for enforcement of the SUMDs?
We'll be asking them we have not specifically asked them for that information, but we will.
It'd probably be helpful if they actually showed up at our June meeting, were able to give us a proposal, how many officers they would take and what they would look like and what the cost would be, because then we would have firm evidence to put to a cost analysis.
I'll make sure that I think they can.
I know that takes time, and I hate to add more to
well,
what you're
doing. Well, the good news is we have good ideas on cost of policing, so I suspect they'll be able to assist us pretty quick.
Great.
And they would have been here today. I'm sorry.
Are the companies going to be able to give us information about how many people have been sent to the hospital on or with these vehicles?
I'm sorry.
Are the companies going to be able to give us information, data on how many people have sustained some type of injury or gone to the hospital on a vehicle?
They're going to be able to get what has been reported to them. Now, what I can't speak for the companies, but I think there are things happen to people. There are scrapes, and people have accidents that aren't reported. So, but they do. That is a part of a report that we do get. Again, is it a complete report? I don't know, because again, some of it I think is probably self-reported. If it's not being. We will get everything they have. We'll also have additional information. I met with one of the assistant fire chiefs yesterday for EMS. They have started collecting the data on all transports. So so all of our metro ambulances and fire services that are responding, we're going to have additional information on that.
This sounds like it's going to be a major meeting in June with a lot of testimony and public hearing. Is there a way we can limit what's on the agenda for June? So that we can, because we've been running out of time almost every meeting, and I hate to rush people on something this important.
If the commission would grant the director wider latitude on approval of certain driver applications, in other words, some of the drivers that come before the commission would have left something off of an application. Some of them would not have bearing, they just left it off the application. It might be 15 years old. Today, we've got a couple that would be old that would not affect whether they got permits. If you wanted me for that period of time to review them and ask the question, does this affect their ability beyond leaving it out? Does it affect their ability, not their ability, but their licensability?
I'm more than happy to let Mr. Fields exercise his discretion if we can limit the number of matters that we normally will be approving once the person comes up here before us.
Right. Then there are some other issues that have to be presented to you, like company changes,
Right.
but we could present those in a consent, as a consent document, very much like you did last month, and basically these are all in order, this is consent. If you want to pull them out, you could, otherwise we could do that.
I certainly don't want to impede other businesses operating or people getting permits to be able to start making a living.
What I'll
But-
do,
Complaints?
complaints,
They can be passed.
we have a couple of complaints that are there, and I don't yet have authority to have hearings on them. I could certainly review the ones that I know we've already got, that we've passed from this meeting, review them and see if they are, if they were to be deferred to another meeting, would that affect public safety or anything like that? And as long as it wasn't affecting public safety and we're not infringing on anybody's rights, we could certainly try to push them to the July meeting.
Does that require a motion?
I'm honestly not sure, because it's different from area of regulation to area of regulation, so the various different chapters regulating various different types of vehicles that you all have jurisdiction over. There's some variations, and so I think Tara and I would probably have to go back and do some research and kind of look at all the different chapter sections and see where there's discretion and where there's not.
There are some instances where there isn't discretion.
So there may be some areas where we could not delegate that to the staff, and some where you could. So I think we would have to get back to you on that. I don't think I can answer that question right now.
Could staff work directly with legal and just basically we'll just go case by case and look at what we've got and then deal with it along those lines, and those things we can't, we would have to bring back or defer, correct?
I think we can do that.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you for everyone's input for the topics for next month's meeting. Because we're going to be having proposed rule changes as well as recommendations, we'll be having a public hearing so we can hear from members of the public as well as the companies. All right, so we'll move on now to our revised agenda. We've got 3 complaints that we're hearing today. The first is from Melody Robinson against Zuniga.
Chairman, on behalf of Ms. Zuniga, the evidence in this matter was taken a few months back. It was deferred with a lot of other things at the same time. I'm not here to complain about it, but you will recall that we offered the statute that we circulated to the commission that laid out criteria by statute as to what constitutes an independent contractor, went over each of those things and then confirmed it with Mr. Smith. That is the proof in response to that. In fact, the statements that she is attributing to Ms. Zuniga were the ones that caused the understandable consternation of the board over whether she had been truthful. She was, I'm not here to relitigate, so to speak, that issue, but the evidence was beyond, there is no countervailing evidence as to whether those factual allegations were true, in as much as they were based simply upon statements made several months ago by Ms. Zuniga in a hearing here. So we respectfully submit that there's no factual or legal basis to go forward with this complaint at this time. So we move to dismiss it.
Can I bring up a question before we get started? Not everybody was here for the previous hearing, was it? That's here today? Yeah.
No.
So what do we do about the fact that if evidence was heard before and we have a new commission member in order to vote and make a decision?
I think it makes sense to go ahead and hear the proof over again, and then we can make a determination on the merits. Sorry. Go.
I'm prepared with the video today, which Ms. Palmer's not here, but you haven't seen it, so.
And Ms. Robinson, if you'll just, for the record, please state your name since we're getting recorded.
My name is Melody Robinson, and I am owner-operator of American Melody Carriages.
All right, and before you get started, Ms. Robinson, I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a second. If you'll please repeat after me.
This is going to be, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon.
I swear or affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give
I swear or affirm that the testimony that I am about to give
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you.
There's something being tendered to the commission. I would like to have a copy of it. This was not tendered to me. I'm not seeing it before.
Do you have another copy? Well, here, we can share.
Yeah, here, you can have mine.
Oh, okay. I'll take my back. There we go.
Mr. Chairman, is there a copy of the complaint? Because this is not what we've discussed in the past. In fact, this is just a little set of,
We have a copy of the complaint that was filed January 9th, 2019.
the one that I recall, if it's in front of the commission, merely alleged that she had stated that she leased the carriage and that she was an independent contractor. That's the one that I was referring to when I spoke initially. This has a number of complete false statements in it that don't need to be in this record. For example, first sentence I look at, Johnny Smith lies to the IRS every year. That's completely false, impertinent, and totally irrelevant to any charge that is before the commission. This is part of her social media campaign. That's where you'll see this video next.
All right, well, Mr. Blackburn, I'm going to let her go ahead and start with the presentation of her case. If there's a specific objection you want to make, as it happens, you can make it.
Can anybody help me with this? I have it all the way up on mine.
Ms. Robinson, what is, can you read to me the language of Chapter 12.54.020 that you claim was violated?
I would have to find it.
Yes.
Thank you. It states that no horse-drawn carriage shall be used or operated on a for-hire basis by any person in the territorial jurisdiction of the metropolitan government without an owner or operator having first obtained a certificate of public convenience and necessity. Each certificate shall be valid for 1 year and subject to renewal pursuant to the provisions set forth in this article. And as I stated at the last meeting, Kim Zuniga does not hold certificate of public convenience and necessity. So I'm actually going to play the 2 videos that Ms. Palmer requested, even though she's not here. I'm not sure what his name is, but he hasn't seen them, and they seem to come up at every single meeting. So there's no volume.
Called the requirement for horses in service as follows. That the
Mr. Chairman, if you could pause that
horses
for a
being
moment.
appropriately shod and
Please.
trimmed, and shall utilize.
If you could pause that for a moment, please.
I would love to speak uninterrupted for once.
Thank you. This is August 25, 2016.
Yes, and you bring it up at every meeting and say that I'm lying.
Question. The question is whether Ms. Zuniga was an independent contractor or an employee, based upon some improvident words that she uttered at a meeting long after, more than a year, 2 years, after the date of this. Ms. Robinson is posting a whole series of intemperate and probably defamatory social media posts. That's what she's about right now. None of this can possibly be relevant to the central question. Is Ms. Zuniga an employee of Sugar Creek or an independent contractor? This kind of pointless cavil is all that she's bringing here, and it's inadmissible, it's immaterial, and this complaint should be dismissed.
Ms. Robinson, why are you wanting to show, why don't you tell us why you're wanting to show a video from 2016?
It was requested by Ms. Palmer, if you would recall, and
What did she
I know that
request
she's not,
specifically for
because she was not
2016?
here, and because it keeps coming up at every meeting, because Mr. Blackburn says that I am lying when I say that you all passed that this rule be changed.
Okay, your complaint, though, is limited to whether or not Mrs. Zuniga was operating without a permit of public convenience and necessity. That's purely what it's limited to.
I understand.
So whether or not there was a basis for a complaint brought against you for whether or not horses needed to be properly shod or not is, I agree with Mr. Blackburn, that's just not relevant. So I think you need to move on and present some evidence to us that Ms. Zuniga was operating without a permit.
With all due respect, then I would ask that he not be allowed to say that I'm a liar. I've suffered character assassination from him in several meetings, and I don't appreciate it. I am the one who came in here and proved that I was not lying.
Is anybody in here not a person who is employed by Mr. Smith?
Actually, I'm not employed by Mr. Smith.
Who are you employed by?
I'm an independent contractor. I'm employed by myself.
Do you drive for Mr. Smith?
I'm an independent
Do
contractor.
you drive for Mr.
No, I do
Smith?
not. I drive for myself.
And why are you here? Are you, I say that, are you a license?
I am a
Carriage
licensed.
operator?
Yes, ma'am. To the city of Nashville.
All right. Whose carriages do you use?
I lease the carriages from Sugar Creek Carriages.
Mr. Smith. Thank you.
And it says that the company you work for is Sugar Creek Carriages. So if you want to learn on the line, check it out.
But you, what's all
As you all just heard, she stated that she does not work for Sugar Creek Carriages. She is an independent contractor, that she leases the carriages from Mr. Smith of Sugar Creek Carriages. Blackburn's defense for Cam is, quote, "Let's be truthful," interesting choice of words. He said, let's be truthful, you were aggravated with Mr. Highland, you were arguing with him. As you can clearly see, she very calmly speaks up. He's not even directly addressing her or anyone, not even making eye contact with him. She only becomes adamant and disrespectful when Mr. Highland asked her to explain. You can see that even he is confused as to why she would say that she works for herself. You will also notice as she goes through declaring her position and the details, Mr. Blackburn and Mr. Smith both nod in agreement with her. I can prove to you right here and now, instance after instance, where Sugar Creek Carriages in its various forms has lied to you. I have the documentation, I have the video. Johnny Smith lied to you when you asked him if he has ever suggested to anyone that they can work under his permit. Several years ago, Stacy Romines, then Stacy Farmer, had her own horse, which she would bring downtown and work on nights when Sugar Creek as a company was not working. Paul Morrison has since bought that horse from her. Joey Stanley owned his own horse and carriage, which he would bring down and work on nights when Sugar Creek was not working. Paul Morrison purchased the carriage from him. He makes his drivers get their own business licenses to operate under his company. And in noticing as I went through written statements from anyone who worked under his company, every one of them referred to themselves, much as Cam did, as either contractors, subcontractors, or independent contractors. I verified with Davidson County Clerk that Russell Bassett had a business license in Davidson County when he worked under his company, and oddly enough, Johnny Smith does not have one in Davidson County. And I have statements from Elizabeth Howe, Stacy Romines, and Charlotte Clausen that they were all made to get business licenses when they worked under his company. And I have statements that various other people, such as Jesse Monville, Carla Parks, Cynthia Chick, Mary Chris Porter, Jimmy Ewell, Jamie Lee, Brittany Mangrum, Robert Heath, and many others, were all made to get their business license while they worked under his company. I submit to you that the complaint against Sugar Creek Carriages was prematurely dismissed and should certainly be reconsidered, much as you reconsidered the 6-month suspension you issued and then reversed at the request of Mr. Blackburn at the following meeting. The court upheld your original decision, by the way, and agreed that Sugar Creek Carriages should be suspended for 180 days based on their, quote, utterly reprehensible behavior. Cam lied to you and she presented photographs of my horses taken from my business page and declared when she was asked by Mr. Blackburn that they were taken from her cell phone. She even responded when asked for a date on the photos, which of the photos were taken. In fact, she would not know because she didn't take them herself. I have pictures of my fully booted horse on the same weekend she was presenting these photos to you and saying that they were not. I would know since I am in fact the one who took the pictures and posted them to my own business page. Cam lied to you when she said she didn't know what tax document she would get from Sugar Creek because she hadn't gotten it yet. Since she also worked for them the previous year, she would know that she was getting nothing, but she didn't want to admit that to you. Cam and Jennifer Snyder lied to you when they were asked point blank by Ms. Powell if they were at Opryland to obtain footage to turn in complaints against my company. They specifically requested my carriage, and the camera was held low to make it not obvious they were recording, and Cam did not join them on the ride, nor even accompany them to the carriage, because she would have been recognized by us.
Chairman, once again, this has been discussed in prior meetings. The question was if you recall, the date upon which the Spring Hill Cemetery event occurred. None of this has the slightest thing to do with whether Cam Zuniga is an employee or independent contractor. This is just more of this ongoing. You will notice that Southern Comfort has not been here in quite some time. We have gotten that ongoing dispute pretty much under control. The last outlaw or renegade we have in that whole matter standing before you, trying to simply make up stories that have nothing whatever to do with the only single charge that's here, upon which we have offered proof going line by line with the statute that makes the distinction between employee and independent contractor.
I'm going to sustain the objection, Ms. Robinson, so you need to move on and present any other proof you have regarding Ms. Zuniga operating without a permit under 12.54.020.
First of all, I'd like to ask Cam a couple of questions.
All right, Ms. Zuniga, I'm going to put you under oath as well. Please repeat after me. I swear or affirm
I swear or affirm
that the testimony that I'm about to give
the testimony I'm about to give
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Do you ever receive group texts from Johnny and Brenda Smith about work?
No,
Really?
I don't get group texts. I have individual texts.
Okay. Were you working for them on April of 2018?
April of 2018?
Yes. Did you receive a text that says, "To all Sugar Creek independent contractors, just because you are independent contractor does not mean that you don't have company rules and regulations"?
Could you move over? We're not picking up any sound.
I don't remember the text or
Okay.
getting the text.
That's all.
Ms. Robinson, is that text in the materials that you gave to us?
No, sir, but I have it right here. Along with other statements, which I mentioned, of other people saying that they will require to get business licenses to work for Sugar Creek Carriages.
Mr. Chairman, this is inadmissible evidence. The witness has been asked if she recalls it. She said, no, she doesn't. Therefore, there is no basis for the authentication of it or the admissibility of it.
Also, I have this, which would indicate that it's not even Sugar Creek Carriages or Johnny Smith that is operating under his,
Ms. Robinson, why don't you ask Mr. Smith if he sent that text?
so he can just lie and say no. Mr. Smith, can I please
And
ask you
Mr.
a
Smith,
question?
I'll have to place you under oath.
Yep.
Please repeat after me. I swear or affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I swear or affirm the testimony I'm about to give is the truth or
The whole truth
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
nothing but the truth.
Did you send this text to any of your workers?
Not that I recall.
Fair enough.
Mr. Smith, is your username for your mobile phone Sugar Creek?
No.
Is there someone in your at your company that uses the username Sugar Creek?
That would be how the recipient
I
has
don't
their
know, sir.
number programmed into their phone.
Please step up to the podium, Mr. Smith, if you'd step up to the podium and ask the question.
And so, who is Stacy?
Stacy Romine, she was known as Stacy Farmer when she worked under Johnny.
And then Elizabeth is a former, so Elizabeth and Stacy are previous Sugar Creek employees, is that correct?
Yes.
Or independent contractors?
Mr. Smith, do you remember sending out a text to your Sugar Creek personnel stating to all Sugar Creek independent contractors, just because you're a independent contractor does not mean you don't have company rules and regulations, whether it is by the owners or the Transportation and Licensing Commission or police or federal government, as well as we all have to follow guidelines from the governing body, and we do want to project Sugar Creek carriages in a neat and professional attire, along with clean carriages and groomed equine. This will help you get more rides in the long run. Also, every worker should also stand with your teammates, as this is the only way to beat Southern comfort. Please get along with each other and help each other, as we are a team. Please confirm. Thank you.
Sounds pretty good, but I didn't do that. I mean, I agree with everything except the independent contractor.
Is there someone at Sugar Creek that's responsible for sending texts like this to all of your personnel at once?
I've had various ranch hands to do that at certain times.
Is it possible you sent this one out, or one of your ranch hands sent this one out?
I don't think so, sir, because we don't have independent contractors. We have employees.
All right, so other than the word independent contractor, the rest of this is consistent with what might have gone out by an email or text message?
I don't recall that. It sounds good, but I don't recall that. I don't recall that going out.
So then, Ms. Robinson, who is this to? Where did you get this from?
I would be happy to provide that information privately. However, that person fears for her safety, and rightfully so. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, stay up here, Mr. Smith. May I ask Mr. Smith a couple of questions, if you're honest? I mean, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, if you're through.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, this is not dated except here it says 4/5/18, which would be a little over a year ago. You've been emailing me for several years under an address that starts with, thank you. You've been sending me messages for years, and your email commences with the word or the phrase or the term info.
Info. Yes, yes, sir.
All right. Even including during this particular time.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Now, I take it you don't have any particular legal training other than what you picked up in all these meetings for a few years.
From the board. That's
right.
and you and Metro Legal.
Until we had the meeting in which questions were asked of you and Ms. Zuniga, did you know what the legal definition of independent contractor was?
Not really.
All right. Well, let me ask you about some of these things that are attributed to you. You said there are company rules and regulations.
Absolutely.
That's attributed to you. Whether this was your email or message or not, you agree that the company... Pardon?
I think that this was a text message. I just want to be clear.
All right. Whether these were, there's no phone number that I see on it, but I believe you're correct, Madam Commissioner. Now, I just want to refer you to the words and by whatever means they may have been disseminated. You do have rules and regulations for your employees?
Yes, sir.
Including Ms. Zuniga?
Yes, sir.
All right. Does that govern their hours of operation?
The hours of operation.
When they can be there? When they have to be at the place where they're to work?
Yes, sir.
And how they're to perform their jobs during that time?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then they are paid in accordance with what they do within that time period.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? And they don't have any ownership of any of this equipment. Is that correct?
No, sir.
That would be the carriages and the harnesses, and then, of course, you have the animals.
Yes, sir.
And the animals are owned by you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, whatever sort of confusion may have occurred over these words, independent contractor, do you ever permit someone just to show up and operate a carriage at his or her own time, convenience, and under that person's own rules and methods of operation.
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman, we went over this with the statute with each particular item. What's being described here plainly does not meet the definition of independent contractor, whatever the statements may have been by persons not trained in the subject matter.
I would like to remind this commission that these are the same people who created lies of malice specifically to destroy my company and stated that I operated for a funeral on a fictitious date.
I had nothing to do.
Ms. Robinson, are you through with your proof?
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything further to present, Mr. Blackburn?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so I think before us really is we have to determine whether or not Mrs. Zuniga is operating without a permit of public convenience and necessity. It's clear from the proof that we heard today that at Sugar Creek, at the very least, Mr. Smith and others at his company used the term independent contractor to describe the personnel who work for them. Mr. Blackburn has presented to us proof that that is not in the legal sense of the word, though. And he has presented proof through testimony that even though Mr. Smith calls his personnel drivers independent contractors, that in a legal sense they are not, because they do not have the discretion that is normally attributable to an independent contractor. So we have to decide whether or not Mrs. Zuniga is an independent contractor, and if she is, then she would be in violation of 12.54020, or if she's more of an employee, then she wouldn't be.
Did you ever, in one of the previous meetings, I think that we asked what kind of tax information you receive, and at that point you had not filed.
I filed actually for an extension, but I do have my pay stubs from the Smiths.
Okay, and so you're submitting that as saying that you are an employee.
Can we see the pay stubs?
I have a current one, but it's on my phone.
That was the magic question a long time ago, whether she received W-2s or whether she paid the 1099, and we never got a straight answer on that.
Well,
And even if you don't have it for this year, you filed an extension, I understand that. What can you remind me what you said? And it really actually doesn't even matter what you said previously. What have you been given for taxes in previous years?
I get it from my stubs.
That may be remedial.
So you, yes,
My
exactly.
sheets.
Do you have,
my church sheets.
Mrs. Zuniga, do you have pay stubs from December?
December, not with me, I don't have access.
Were your
we'd have to dig them out.
Were your earning statements, in December, did they have withholdings for federal income tax and Social Security and Medicare?
I don't think so. I don't work that many hours. I don't work over 30 hours.
Because really, I think the easiest way to do this would be to look at the previous tax documents and to see if she gets a W-2 or a 1099. I mean, unless I'm not thinking about it correctly, which if I'm not, please let me know. But if you get a W-2, you are an employee. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if you get a 1099, you are not an employee. Is that correct?
Your Honor, may I, excuse me, Mr. Chairman? Yes. May I respond?
Yes.
Those distinctions have been raised at this meeting. This is a business which I would characterize as honest but not sophisticated. Because of the questions that have been raised, I have suggested to Mr. Smith that he go back to an accountant and get these things done in the manner that you are discussing. I'm not a tax attorney. I don't know whether a W-2 was required or not. I suspect that it was required. However, none of that pertains to the legal definition of independent contractor versus employee. If there is a regulatory issue, then that is with the Internal Revenue Service, and it's a monetary and tax issue. The question of independent contractor has been debated in Tennessee for in excess of a century, beginning especially, but not totally, with the whole idea of workers' compensation and the requirements. If you're an employee, then you had to have workers' compensation coverage if you had 5 or more employees, which was a requirement, and I think still is. And so a whole lot of cases evolved over the years that set out these criteria. What I presented to you was a statute which attempted to codify these things that had evolved before primarily the Tennessee Supreme Court, where workers' compensation claims appeals went. Those issues have to do with control. They have to do with who has the right to direct the performance of the employee. Your issues have to do with who has the right to direct the performance of the employees, because your duty is not to determine whether this is properly reported to the Internal Revenue Service in the state of Tennessee. Your duty is to make sure that this is safe and that these operations are safe. Therefore, these are the distinctions that are important. Outside the workers' compensation context, independent contractor could be guilty of a negligent act, and that act might not be imputed to the supposed employer. If that person is an independent contractor, it's his or her own negligence, not subject to being imputed. These are all employees. They're all covered by Mr. Smith's liability coverage. If one of them commits a negligent act causing an injury during the operation, then the policy that this board requires Sugar Creek have would defend that claim. That wouldn't be true if these were independent contractors.
Mr. Blackburn, we actually have Ms. Tara Ladd has done some research for us on this issue, and I think she wanted to bring this to our attention.
Yeah, I was just going to say that for workers' compensation, he's generally right that it's a factor test that you look at, but none of those factors are actually dispositive. The cases are all over the place. It looks at each case individually, and from there, each court makes its decision by looking at the extent of the factors. So I just want to read the factors again so you'll have an idea of what the courts are looking for when they try to make this determination in a workers' compensation type case, because this is when this analysis comes up the most. So the first is the right to control the conduct of the work. Number 2, the right of termination. Number 3, the method of payment, and that's what you had touched on earlier. The freedom to select and hire helpers, the furnishing of tools and equipment, self-scheduling or working hours, and the freedom to offer services to other entities outside of the company that they're working for. Now, as I said, I would love to give you a bright line test where they said if this, then this, but unfortunately that's not the way it works. It is all over the place, no one factor being dispositive. As I stated before, they would just look at these factors and then make a determination. Want me to read them again?
Yeah, I don't mind.
All right, So number 1 is the right to control the conduct of the work. Number 2 is the right of termination. Number 3 is the method of payment. Number 4, the freedom to select and hire helpers. Number 5, the furnishing of tools and equipment. Number 6, self-scheduling or working hours. And number 7, the freedom to offer those services to other entities.
Freedom to go work for somebody else.
That's how I read it. To use the carriage and
Or off your own.
yeah, outside of the services, correct. So that's pretty much the guidance that I can provide you.
Mr. Chairman, this is the statute that I copied and made available to the board at that time. We went over each of these. The method of payment, by the way, ordinarily refers to whether you have a contract price. So if you hire someone, for example, to put a roof on your home, and he brings employees with him, if he says, I'm going to charge you $10,000 for this task, and then at the end of the day, when the roof is completed, you pay me what I've charged, that's a method of payment. Now, in that circumstance, it would be exactly what Mr. Smith has been doing. He owns the equipment. He's testified in a prior hearing and would again.
Blackburn, can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
I want to know your opinion. What are we to make of the fact that prior to this complaint being brought, the people driving the carriages considered themselves independent contractors, and Mr. Smith considered them independent contractors? Where does that factor in on these seven? Where is that consideration, these 7 factors that they all believed they were independent contractors?
Well, I would say first, I don't believe there's any proof that they all did. However, even if they
She
did,
said on the
it does.
video multiple times, I'm an independent contractor.
She said that. That's right. But what was
I'm talking about their state of mind. They all believed they were independent contractors, from the person who owned the business to the person working at the business.
Not all of us. No, they didn't. I did not.
Let me just.
All right, specific to this case right here, Ms. Ziga clearly stated she was an independent contractor and she leased the equipment from Mr. Smith. What am I to make of the state of mind of the person who had the company and the lady who was testifying?
A legal conclusion cannot be premised on a state of mind of a person.
Okay, you've answered my question then. That's your position.
Yes, there either is proof that these people are independent contractors or they're not. Suppose, for example, we're in the context.
We don't need to belabor it. I just want to know what your position is about their state of mind, since they were pretty clear to me she was getting paid without anything being taken out that typically resembles a W-2 employee. So, yeah.
Yes,
sir. If you want to prove that they are employees, why wouldn't you show us W-2?
Because at the time we had the hearing before.
I mean, today. I don't know about the past, obviously.
Well, let's start with the fact that
What about today? Why don't you
let's
just
start
show
with
us
the fact that I
W-2?
don't have the burden of proof.
You don't?
No, sir. Let's start with that. Secondly,
Why wouldn't you just show them, whether you do or not, why wouldn't you just show them and end the question?
because this is not a tax question. And
I'm not
because-
asking for tax
And
questions.
because
I'm
it
just
has been
asking
explained
Well, wait a
multiple
minute, let me
times.
finish, okay? And why wouldn't you just show that as evidence that they're employees? Wouldn't that be a simple matter?
We can show you the payroll.
Stop. It would be one means to show one thing.
Okay.
It does not, let's suppose that there was an accident and Mrs. Aniga was charged with negligence. Could she merely say, wait, I'm an independent contractor, therefore Mr. Smith is not liable? And just bring up a W-2 form to demonstrate it? There's not a court in Tennessee that would hold that.
We're not a court. What's it got to do with us?
Because you are obligated to follow the law. Surely.
Not about workers' compensation.
Here's some proof that I sent Cam when I through PayPal.
Put you under oath, ma'am.
Okay, sorry.
Will you please state your name?
It's Brenda Smith.
All right. Please repeat after me. I swear or affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give
I swear that the testimony that I'm about to give
is the truth,
is
the whole truth,
the
and
whole
nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth. So
Thank
help me
you.
God. Right here I have proof where I've sent Cam several times money through PayPal when she's done stuff for us. See, that's hers, and I'm sending her different, you can see the dates.
All right.
What are we looking at?
On PayPal account where I send her money for work she's done.
I think that and this is just to get beyond this detail here on the W-2s versus 1099s. I mean, as Ms. Ladd and Mr. Blackburn have told us, there's several factors for us to consider here on whether or not someone is actually, from a legal perspective, an independent contractor or an employee. I think it's pretty clear from the evidence we've seen that at least through January of this year, Mrs. Zuniga was receiving compensation without any withholdings. She even stated under oath a few minutes ago that she did not believe that withholdings were being made from her paychecks. That's the way I'm seeing the evidence shake out.
I'm ready to close the hearing and deliberate on it, make a decision.
All right.
All right, we got 7 factors. I'll try to kick this thing off. We have 7 factors to look at here. I think the one regarding method of payment, despite respectfully disagreeing with Mr. Blackburn, that I think we all pretty much agree that the method of payment would not weigh in favor of Mr. Ziga. But I do think you got to look at the other 6. Right to control the conduct of the work. The testimony we've heard is that Mr. Smith controls the people who are driving his carriages, where they work, when they work. The right to terminate, I haven't heard any evidence contrary to the indication that she would be an employee, that she doesn't have the right to terminate other people or the authority to do that. I've discussed the method of payment. Select and hire helpers. I haven't heard any testimony that would suggest that Mrs. Ziga had the right to hire helpers to work for her to drive Mr. Smith's carriages. I think that would be the way of analyzing it. Furnish tools and equipment. And I balance that either way. The tools and equipment are provided by Mr. Smith, but yet Ms. Zuniga said that she leases the carriages from him at the time we had it. Now it's sounding like it's not leasing it, that it's actually provided by him. So you can toss that one either way. Self-scheduling hours. The testimony I've heard is that they pick and choose the time they want to work. That it's not, excuse me. Could we have a little respect for this right here? Self-scheduling hours. From what I have gathered from this is that they can choose whether to work or not to work. And freedom to offer their services to someone else, I haven't heard testimony one way or the other about that. So, and that's just to kick this thing off to see where we are.
You know, in my mind, one thing that was stated at least once, but maybe a couple of times, is that the business is not, I believe the correct word was sophisticated enough to know one way or the other how to conduct themselves. And you know, that's almost like saying I didn't know I was breaking the law. And I know that this isn't law, but to me, they're analogous. And I don't know that I can agree with that.
Well, I do want to point one thing out. And I agree on some level with what Mr. Blackburn is arguing, which is whether or not Sugar Creek Carriages has violated IRS tax laws or any state laws regarding workers' comp or anything like that. That's not before us. We just have to decide, did Kama Zuniga operate unlawfully without a permit of public convenience and necessity? I mean, and from what I'm hearing, she didn't, because she doesn't have control. She's not an independent contractor. She is at the beck and call of Sugar Creek Carriages and what to do, and that would mean that she is not operating unlawfully without a permit of public convenience and necessity. Now, Sugar Creek Carriages might have some legal issues with respect to state laws and IRS. But that's not before us. It's purely, did Ms. Zuniga operate unlawfully without a permit? Sounds like she doesn't have to have a permit. Sugar Creek Carriages has to have a permit.
And just to be clear, the company has a certificate of public convenience and necessity. The
Certificate.
drivers do have individual permits in addition to that.
Thank you for that terminology correction, certificate of public convenience and necessity.
Well, I make a motion to dismiss the complaint.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. We have another complaint, this one brought by David Witt against Express Towing.
David Witt? Mr. Witt?
We ever hear anything from Mr. Witt?
Mr. Witt obviously filed the complaint. We spoke on the phone. He spoke with the inspector. I was anticipating him being present. Representative from Express Towing is present.
Got a recommendation, Mr. Fields?
Well, in the conversation I had with Mr. Witt, it boiled down to a couple of things. When obviously I wasn't present. Mr. Witt was, there was a situation where there was a non-consent tow. The vehicle was taken back to Express Towing. Mr. Witt appeared to pick up his vehicle. There was a dispute over whether or not they would take a credit card. He says they would not take the credit card. That started it. He eventually was able to pay by credit card, so the question is, was there a violation? I don't know if there was a dispute between the company and the individual because I was not present. Mr. Witt may could have presented information along those lines. But I do have, and I don't have them in my hand, but I have reviewed them, and I believe Express can show where they take credit card payments on a routine basis and regular payment. He also said that the driver was not licensed. That proved to not be true. The driver did have a license. Then finally, the issue of whether or not the license to operate as a wrecker was present on the wall or in public view. I again was not present at that moment. I have been advised that the permit is on the wall now. Whether or not it was that night, I'm not sure. Again, there is someone from Express present if you'd like to question.
Mr. Witt's not here, though.
Mr. Witt is not present.
I move to dismiss the complaint.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have another complaint before us today from Fadi Busamra against Abraham Durbo.
And I've been unable to speak to Mr. Durbo prior to the meeting. At about 11:20 this morning, I received an email from the complainant saying that he was traveling and would be unable to be present today.
This is the failure to turn on the taxi meter or some dispute about that?
Mr. Durbo is present, and I think he has a representative if you'd like to hear from him.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The Director of Commissioner, Mr. Bill. Thank you for serving us in this room, and it was an amazing event for me. Not amazing, it's like a very unbelievable event, which I can say once I get this complaint on my email, which I barely remember is I was driving. By the way, I don't know if I told you my name. My name is Abraham Durbo. I drive to Printers Alley at that night, and the reason I drive there is not for work, and my car is, the vacant light was turned off, and there's no reason customer come to me because I drive a cab. I'm a student, I was doing my assignment. Thanks to God, I graduate right now. But these people, once I meet my friend here, he was celebrating his 50th birthday, and he invited me, but I couldn't stay there because of my schedule. I just want to wish him happy birthday, and I stopped there almost like 1 minute until he came out from the bar. Then in that minute, these people can't jump in my car. I think it's like 6 or 5 people. The person who I think the complaint was sit in the front, and he asked me to go the hotel. At the time, even he didn't mention the hotel. He said, it's not far, just drive. Then I said, sir, I'm not driving. And also, this is not right place for me. Let me back it up, and I'm going to home. I need to stay there. I have a student. I came here to meet people. What do you say again? I repeat the same thing. Then he said, you know what? I work for the city. If you don't give me this right, I'll make sure you don't work in the cities. And well, the thing I was emotional. I said, once he says that, I don't care wherever you work, but I'm not working. Then he took a picture of my permit. Even I said, why don't take mine myself too? Then all of them get out from my car. That's what happened. But on the thing said, on the report it said taxi ordinance, ordinance number 7. Let me see, it's somewhere here. 6.72.265 taximeters, but that's all talking about to put the meter in front of the passengers all the time, whether I'm working or not. My meter is always there, and it's inspected. When I drive, I do. It's not something changed, it's already installed there. And also, the location was not on Broadway. It is a Printer's Alley. And it's more than wasting my time. I didn't see this is something gonna bring me to the commission to testify, so actually that's all what I have. Thank you for listening.
Is Fadi Rosama here?
He is he contacted the office at about 11:20, 11:15 this morning by email.
So, Mr. Durbo, is your testimony, and I just realized I have not put you under oath, so if you'll please repeat after me. I swear or affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I swear the testimony which I'm about to give is truth, is not about the truth.
Thank you. So it's your testimony, Mr. Dober, that you did have the meter on?
I didn't. I'm not working. You can request all my document from my office. I didn't work. I'm not working. This car is I use for personal use. And
Did you charge Mr. Busamra $20 for the ride?
I didn't charge him. I did not.
Do I understand you just graduated from college somewhere?
Yes, from Tennessee State University in majoring health information management and minor general business. Actually, I'm an honor student. I do my best to live. I don't know this guy, where he know me. Even I saw him right now, I don't know him. Middle night, he just come, jump my car, and he waste my time. That's all I remember.
You said your vacant light is not on, correct?
No, my vacant light is not on. Even the mic, to be honest with you, sometimes even when I'm working, if I'm vacant, even the light is turned on, the customers talk to me, ask me like, are you open? Yes, I'm open. Then once they come in, I ask where they go. And I've been driving almost 7 years. So I have a lot of friends, not just my friends, my customers. So I don't have much issue. I know how to communicate with people. So I remove very minor issues from coming here, so.
I have a question.
Yes.
In your experience, what would be the fare between Printer's Alley and the Westin Hotel?
Probably it depends on the customer. Sometimes in that time, I think it's 12:40 something, and weekend, so it's a lot of traffic. So sometimes they prefer the shortest, the longest, but the shortest time. So if they want to round around, maybe it's like 3 miles. But if it's straight, even if how much we wait, maybe 1 mile and something to West End. But if there's 5 people, the meter standard on by 3, there's extra person, extra passenger, maybe $10 or $11. If we go 2 miles, maybe it's $15. That's $10
to $15.
$10 to $15, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Fields, any prior problems with Mr. Durbo?
I've not had any disciplinary issues with Mr. Durbo.
Or do you know him at all?
I do know
What do you
Mr. Durbo.
What do you say about it regarding his record or his driving?
You know, I try really hard not to be personally involved with my taxi cab driver, but over the last 20 years, I've gotten to know the cab drivers really well in the city. Mr. Durbo is a good driver. I've not had any issues with him. He's been a representative of, he was actually one of the original representatives of Nash Vegas when they came to us in 2015 to become a cab company. He was actually one of the original founding members of the company. Again, he's. I was again. It almost, you know, for, if I could, can't recuse myself, but from a family situation, when he comes, he often brings his children or his child to the commission, and it's. So yeah, I know him very well. I will have to say we were very surprised when I opened the email and I didn't read I opened the attachment and it was a copy of his permit. When I saw the face, I was very surprised that it was him.
It would be pretty extraordinary to dismiss a complaint when the complainant's not here and actually did notify you that they were traveling and unable to make it, but Mr. Durbo has presented a pretty compelling case.
Yeah, and I would also add that the complainant's complaint is for a violation of not operating a taxi meter, but then the description is more along the lines of refusing service. And it sounds like, from what Mr. Durbo has testified to, that he wasn't working.
I make a motion to dismiss.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Congratulations on graduating.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is under low-speed vehicles. We have two driver applications, one from Mr. Timothy Fisher and another from Daniel Medley. Mr. Fields.
Mr. Fisher? Timothy Wayne Fisher, are you present? Does not appear to be present. I'm sorry? It is not. It is not.
He didn't contact you?
We, not that I'm aware of.
Anybody from Cruising?
I don't think so.
I move that we postpone this to the next meeting.
A second.
Would this be one of the applications that you, Mr. Fields, could make a determination on, if we decided to give you more description?
Really, what got him here, if he had been here, he just had some issues with his driving over a period of years, not in the last, failure to provide proof information, passed the stop sign in 2018, had a speeding ticket, and it's more of a driving issue. I certainly can visit with him. There's nothing in here that would prohibit him being a driver. I could ask he and the company manager to come to the office and meet with him.
I have one question on Cycle 1 and his criminal history, and maybe I'm just not reading it right. It was a probation violation, and then it says, I think it's talking about his license, extend probation for it's just probation for 6-month term to expire 7/30/19. And I didn't know if does that disqualify if he's still under?
It was a misdemeanor charge. Had it been for one of the felonies and he were on probation, it could be a disqualifier.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, we have a pending motion to defer the second.
And really, what I need to amend my motion, if you are going to review and it's not going to be postponed to the next meeting? You
could withdraw your motion and I could in other words, basically, and I don't think it would take, you could refer it back to me for review.
I'd go ahead and defer it, and then if it's resolved in the meantime, you can just confer with the chair about omitting it from the following agenda.
then based off of that, my motion would stay the same. Is that correct?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next is Daniel Medley, his application for low-speed vehicle permit.
Mr. Medley, and you have a representative from the company?
Mr. Fields.
In making his application, he failed to disclose a 2009 reckless driving. He was originally scheduled to be at the April meeting, but he was not present and then deferred to this meeting.
Would you like to explain to us what happened?
Yeah, it was just a mistake on what I should have put on the application. It was just in 2007, I believe, right after high school. Just honest mistake. I would have wrote it on there the first time, so I didn't have to use everybody's time. So my apologies.
But what were the circumstances under which you had the reckless driving?
I honestly don't remember what was pulled because it's been a couple months. It was.
It's a reckless driving out of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So what were the facts that got you arrested for it?
Oh, well, I wasn't arrested.
Or cited.
It was just, most likely speeding at the time. Just.
Seems to me it looks like it may have been an accident. There's on the report it says ACD. Do you remember an accident in Virginia?
No, sir. No, never caused an accident before. My recollection was speeding. So.
Did you ever have a DUI in Tennessee?
No, sir.
Was your license ever revoked in Tennessee?
No, sir.
You can't remember why you got cited for reckless driving?
Honestly, no. But I assumed speeding. I was 18, and I'm sure it was a speeding ticket.
Make a motion to approve for the low-speed vehicle usage.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Medley.
Thank you.
Next item is under records. We have a driver application for Joe Mamal. Mr. Mamal? Is it Marmal or Mamal?
Marmal.
Thank
Yes.
you. Mr. Fields?
In making his application, he failed to list a 2000 assault child abuse. It was dismissed.
How'd you forget to list that one?
I did not forget. I thought it was all the same together with the violence, domestic violence arrest.
From that you did put on here from 1999, arrested for domestic violence?
Correct.
You thought it was a part of that?
I mean, I didn't get arrested twice. It was just one single thing.
Where was the arrest?
Nashville, Davidson County.
And everything was dismissed?
Yes, sir.
Why was it dismissed?
I mean, even the officer who come to arrest me told me that he didn't believe everything my ex-wife was accusing me of.
What's the worst that she was accusing you of?
That I hit my younger daughter with a belt.
How old was the younger daughter?
I'm sorry?
How old was your younger
She was
daughter?
under 5.
Under 5?
Yes, sir.
4, 3, 2?
Close to 5. Yes,
Close to
4.
5, okay. So I'm back to my question. Why was it dismissed? Did they not show up for court, or?
I believe that she didn't. To be honest with you, it's been a little while. I can barely remember. But most likely, I think she didn't show up for court.
Who's the company, Mr. Fields?
It's his own company. He's starting a company.
Oh.
Yes.
You got experience running a record company?
Yes, I truly do.
In what way?
I used to own a body shop, and we used to have our own towing truck. So we were doing our own tow truck service.
Your wife and your child and everybody in the family still together?
No, we separated after that incident, and I'm happy married again with my new wife. We got 3 kids. One of them is 10, 8, and 4.
No other issues, Mr. Fields?
No, sir.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next, we have a request to review Mitchell West Nashville Records' new address at 6400 Louisiana Avenue.
Anytime an emergency or non-consent record company moves, their address just has to be presented to the commission. He has what we presented today was the use and occupancy permit from the Metropolitan Codes Department. I personally went out and reviewed the lot. I think the inspectors have as well, but it meets the code and requirements. But it has to be presented to you for acceptance.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Mitchell, thank you for your patience today. Pedal vehicles, we've been asked to review the driver application for Paris McKinney.
Paris McKinney, in making his application, he failed to list a 2002 domestic assault, as well as a 2000 worthless check. Actually, a 2002 and a 2003 domestic assault. No, I'm sorry, it's one charge. It went from 2002 to 2003, excuse me.
And a worthless check charge.
And a worthless check in 2000.
Same question. Why'd you forget to put these on, or why didn't you put them on?
The charge was it was dismissed, and I wasn't arrested. We got into an argument. She threw my stuff outside. I tried to get in the house. I seen it was going south. She called the police, so I left. So I removed myself from the situation. And then my cousin told me that, the police wanted to talk to me. So I went down to the precinct, turned myself in. They talked to me. I signed the paper and they let me go. I did not know it was on my record. I get a background check every 5 years because I have a hazmat. The worthless check. Say again?
I'm sorry, you have a...
I drive for a living. I have a hazmat.
Gotcha, okay.
Hazard endorsements. So, and they do background check every 5 years. And I didn't even know it was on here. I was just as shocked as when I seen this. I got a copy of that on my background check, and I'm like, I just didn't even know it was on there. Or that check. The check was back in 2000. That's when I was going to the lower part of my life. So I had paid the check, and now I got pulled over. And when they took me in, they just said it was an outstanding charge on it. But when they looked at it, I had paid it all except for I guess the
Court costs?
The court cost was, no, it wasn't even, yeah, it was a court cost. It was a court cost on it. So I paid $100 and that was it.
When did you pay that $100?
Right then and there.
No, what date? Recently?
Oh, no, that was back in, let's see, 2001.
Because I'm looking at the Tennessee Bureau Investigation report about the worthless check, and I was hoping to see something down there that said it was dismissed, but I haven't found that yet. I may have missed it, but.
I haven't seen it on here that it was dismissed, but I do know that check has been paid.
Because the domestic assault charge does show being dismissed. Make a motion to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have applications for other passenger vehicles for hire. Thank you, Mr. McKinney. The first is Arthur G. Davis, Jr.
Mr. Davis? Mr. Davis, in making his application, had a truthful, again, it's extensive record, but a truthful sharing the information with us, but it is extensive and meets the commission's request to bring extensive backgrounds to you.
Your last charge was in 2016. Am I looking at that correctly?
No, ma'am. The last charge I had was in 2011. It was in 2011, 2010 or 11. I got convicted on the charge, I think, in 2011. It happened in 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
You're Mr. Davis, right?
Yes, I'm Arthur Davis.
All right, what about it following too closely, March 20th, 2000?
Ah, you're talking about on the tickets?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I thought you were talking about the felony case. Yes, ma'am, that was, do you want me to explain to you? It was for following too close and a speeding ticket.
Okay.
And basically, we were going to New Orleans on a trip, and my son was in front, my daughter was in the middle, and I was in the end. And truthfully, my daughter got pulled over, so I pulled over because she got pulled over, and I was behind her. And I'm just not saying it to be saying it. My wife was jabbing off to the officer because we wasn't speeding. And so I wound up with a speeding ticket and a following too close ticket. And I paid, just being honest, that's what happened going to New Orleans. If she would have been quiet, I would have never got the ticket. My daughter would have got the ticket.
So
you realize,
it's your wife's fault? Is that what you said?
I'm just being honest. That's what happened because they was well, it's the truth though. She just would have just let it be because I stopped because my daughter got stopped and she got stopped by the police. So my thing was to stop because my daughter, she got my grandchildren in the car. My son was already gone, And so they like, okay, who was in the red car? My son was gone, and so that's what happened, man.
I learned today that these recordings of these meetings are available forever because I just saw myself in 2016.
I know.
Somebody should have warned you to take the Fifth Amendment.
I just stayed quiet about that part. And it seems like some of what I would consider more serious stuff, that the property, possession, or casual exchange, that those were from 2001. So, yeah, I'm seeing 2001 for some of these dates, going back to 1978.
I do have a past, yes, ma'am. I do admit, but the changes within myself, as you've seen in the last 9 years, except for the tickets that I got. I've been driving for the shuttle, and my customer service is follow the best. I have recommendations and stuff. And so that's based about what I do for a living for driving. So I was trying to get my permit to start driving for the limousine service with Mr. Omar, his company Go Livery.
Can I try to get a little flavor of what your past history's been, okay?
Excuse me?
Let me see if I can get an idea of what your past history's been without spending too much time, okay?
Okay, yes, sir.
Looks like you were involved in selling cocaine over a period of time. It starts in Davidson County.
Yeah.
And then there's also in Rutherford County.
Okay, it wasn't.
And then there's violations of parole. So give me a little history.
Okay, it wasn't basically, you can basically say, yeah. It was basically selling the cocaine, you can say that.
And it looks like it's all the way up to 2011 that this is going on.
Well, in 2011, the cocaine charge shouldn't have been there. The pills, they stopped about the schedule because it was my medication. What they talked about the schedule 3, it was my medications. I was on hydrocodone because I had hurt my hand, and associate of mine, I'm not gonna call a friend, and asked me did I have some, and I told him yes. And so when I met up with him, I did let him get a few of them, and he had some marked money. He had gotten in some trouble doing something, and so I was the guinea pig for it.
But he had marked money, and
I went down the street, and they just gathered in. I mean, I couldn't deny it. So.
And in 2009, you were charged with possession with the intent to sell half a gram or more cocaine.
Yeah.
All right. And then I also see several parole violations. Why was your parole violated?
My parole was violated because I was out on bond when I had caught the cases.
All right.
I was out on bond, and it was about a year later, I was still going to court. It was a year later, and when I went in to see my parole officer, they said because of the timing of the case and everything, they violated it.
So you're on parole and you pick up new charges.
I was on parole when I caught the charge. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So then they violated your parole. Are you on parole today?
No, sir. I had finished that. It was a 40-year sentence that I had gotten.
How long?
40-year sentence. I had got it in 1983. 40.
You had a 40-year sentence?
I had got it in 1983. Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's what you were on parole for when you picked up these new charges of the hydrocodone and the cocaine?
Yes, sir. I came off that parole.
When did you finish parole?
I finished parole in, I want to say it was about 2.5, 3 years ago.
Just 2.5 years ago?
About 3 years ago. Yeah, the 40-year sentence, I think, ended about 3 years ago. From 83, I want to say about 3 years ago was over.
If it was a full 40-year sentence, it'd be about.
Yeah, well, it was up on the old law first of all, and back in the old law you did a lot more time.
I really need to know when you got off parole.
I got off parole, if I'm not mistaken, I'm thinking this is 19. I want to say 2016.
Because we are
2 to
not
3 years ago.
permitted to give a license to.
Yeah, I would think it was 2016 when I came off parole.
Were you under supervised parole?
No, I was on unsupervised
How long
parole.
were you on unsupervised?
When I got out, my score was so low. When I was released, I was on unsupervised parole because I hadn't gotten no trouble when I was in there, no write-ups or nothing.
The year of release was what?
I got released on that in.
All right, I apologize. Mr. Davis, I'm looking at the records. It says that you received a 45-year sentence for robbery with a deadly weapon.
Yeah, but
Does that refresh your memory a little bit?
Yes, sir, but the 5 years came off of it, so it wound up being a 40-year sentence. The 5 years got ran into it.
Yeah, because you had 3 years for larceny and 2 years for burglary that were run probably consecutive with the 40 for a 45-year sentence.
No, but they took the 5 years, which with 5 years was the weapon charge, and it got ran into the 40-year sentence. So I wound up with a 40-year sentence.
All right, and you may not have gotten off parole till 2016.
Yes, sir.
All right. We need to look at something a second because there's some regulations we have about whether you're eligible to receive this permit or not.
Okay.
And I'm going to lean towards Metro Legal.
It appears that it says that you have to, if you're, well, let me read it again. Did we amend that? This is the Metro Code. This is not, so it says, has been convicted, pleaded guilty, nolo contendere, placed on judicial diversion pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated 4035-313, or been released from incarceration, probation, or parole within a period of 7 years prior to the date of the application for violation of any of the following criminal offenses under the laws of Tennessee or any other state of the United States of America: homicide, rape, aggravated assault, kidnapping, robbery, burglary, domestic assault or domestic violence. Sorry, I didn't read the whole thing. Child sexual abuse, any sex-related offense, leaving the scene of an accident, criminal solicitation or a criminal attempt to commit any of the above, perjury or false swearing in making any statement under oath in connection with the application for a driver's permit, or the felony possession, sale, or distribution of narcotic drugs or controlled substances. That's the second page. Put that one in.
I'm checking the code just for the update. I'll make sure that we're at the right one.
It's 674.
Mr. McNally, you have worked with Mr. Fields to make recommendations to the council to shorten the period of time you have parole?
Yes. Mr. Fields?
We're actually working its way up to through the legislative process.
And that would shorten it to 3 years instead of the 7 years for many offenses, not for all offenses. Sex offenses was going to stay longer still.
Yeah, this is what's still occurring according to the clerk's website.
So, just so that I'm clear, where I see, yeah, I see where it says parole revoked. That was for the hydrocodone incident, and so then you were, explain it to me again.
Excuse me.
Explain exactly what happened to me again, because we're trying to figure out the timeline to see.
Okay, I caught the case in, to my recollection, I think it was 2010. I got convicted in 2011 for the case, so which is what, eight years ago? I got convicted 8 years ago on the case.
And the parole ended when?
The parole was on my 1983 case.
Okay.
Yeah, and to my recollection, I think it ended in 16 or 15, the end of 15 or 16. I'm not sure which year it was, but
I think anyway, it sounds like any way it goes, that would be at best 4 years. And based off of what she just read, as it stands right now, you would have needed to have been
Released from parole at least 7 years before today.
and so I don't think that we're based off of where we are right now with the law, we're not able to approve you.
Apparently, there's pending legislation to change that law and to make it a shorter period of time. And do you know if that would include the offense that he was sentenced for? Was it burglary? Robbery was on the list, I believe.
Mr. Davis, we don't know specifically when you came off parole, but it certainly looks like the period of time that you have to be off parole before you're eligible to receive a permit to drive is 7 years, and it looks like you're still not past that period of time. My suggestion to you would be to pay attention or to keep in touch with Mr. Fields' office, because that period of time may be shortened to 3 years for your offense of armed robbery. And if it is, then I would resubmit your application. I would fill it out completely. Now that you got your background check, fill it out completely. And I would also present something to Mr. Fields' office that shows when you actually were terminated from parole.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought, when I filled out the application, I thought that it was like on time, and like, say for instance, when I caught the last case, like I say, even though I was on parole, it had to be 7 years old, reason why. off. Okay.
So for instance, today, if you were to go check your parole papers and you determined that it was 2012 or 2011, it would be the 7 years.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're not certain, then.
Now, I know it wasn't no 2012. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Appreciate your honesty on that.
Okay.
It may be possible that there may be a legislative change to that made in the future, so maybe keep in touch with Mr. Fields, and if there is, then it may be possible for you to reapply before the 7 years is up.
Okay.
And in the future, meaning not like 15 years from now, they have, from what I understand, this has been submitted.
It is a legislative review spot and legal to kick it on to the next
It
level.
hasn't been filed with it.
We've not filed it yet, but it's in that review.
Okay, so it's being reviewed currently. So it's in motion. It's not something that, we're thinking about doing or something like that. The steps have been put in place. Now, whether it goes through, we'll have to see.
Okay.
But yeah, like she said, there's no guarantee, but the steps have at least been started.
It is up to the Metropolitan Council.
Okay, then, thank you, and I appreciate that.
I thought for sure you were with Three Guys, Bow Ties Driving Company.
Okay, no, man. No, sir.
Good luck to you.
All right, I think we need a motion.
I get is a motion to deny the request by Mr. Davis, or the application by Mr. Davis.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we have an application from Harris Tucker Jr. for other passenger vehicle for hire permit.
Mr. Tucker?
While Mr. Tucker's coming up, can I make one observation? Mr. Davis is an example of why I wanted to recommend that period of time be shortened from 7 years to 3 years. Other than being being released off parole 4 or 5 years ago, I think he would have been a good candidate to approve his application.
I would suspect we should have that in front of the council, easily this summer, in early summer, I would suspect.
And we'll still have the discretion to look at each applicant to decide whether we want to approve them or not.
In a case like this, you would have been looking at it anyway because you left something off.
Yeah.
Actually, you said you hadn't. You didn't leave.
You just brought it because it was extensive.
Yeah.
You brought it.
Listed everything.
Oh, was that the one? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the next one. I apologize.
So that should be commended.
All right, Mr. Fields, I presume Mr. Tucker did not fully disclose his history.
There were 2 charges he failed to disclose, one in 1992, which was a larceny charge, and a 2001 theft charge he failed to include in his application.
I didn't have to go to court on them. I assumed by them telling me this wasn't on my record. Wasn't supposed to put it on there. They told me when I went back to get the second application that I misread it, that I should have put it on there. I'm thinking if I hadn't been convicted of it and they said it wasn't going to be on my record, I just didn't list it.
So you knew about it, but thought you didn't have to put it on there.
Correct. Since they said I didn't go before a judge. It was 92 was a gun charge. They threw that out because they said the gun wasn't stolen. I didn't even go into the courtroom. The officer met me in the hall, said the gun come back not stolen. I said, I told you the gun wasn't stolen. It was mine. They said, well, go pay the court costs, and this will be dropped. It won't even be on your record. And I went to class on the bottle of cologne thing, and I think that was in the one in 01. And they said that would be. So I just didn't list it because they said nothing was going to exist. I hadn't had to even deal with it since that time. Just like, I think I got their report when the lady told me to come back or whatever, the tickets. I went to class on them, so they said dismissed, it won't show up. And when I got the report at the driver's license place, it's not on there, so.
Well, it does look like that case may have been a misdemeanor. Looks, from the description I see, it looks like a shoplifting. Is that what happened?
It was a bottle of cologne. It was another case. The other guy, I didn't want to hear my wife smile. We just got married and I didn't have money to get a gift. I'm not going to lie about it. So it was one bottle of cologne.
Why is everybody blaming the wives?
Hey. That's when I was laughing back at him. I didn't want to hear her mouth.
Did you think it worked for him and you were going to try it out too?
No. She's
You still
passed.
got to go home.
No, she's passed in 11. I woke up. She had a heart attack in her sleep.
Oh, exactly.
So a $151 bottle of cologne?
No. I guess that was what I paid for the court costs. Not
Oh,
cologne,
yeah,
wasn't it?
you're right. You're right.
$20-something or
No,
something, whatever it was. Bottle of Charlie, that's what she liked.
Okay.
Actually, it was a $151 bottle.
Well, yeah.
True.
Plus 8 hours on a Saturday.
And it looks like on your, you called it a gun charge, you were charged with unlawful possession of a weapon, but you're also charged with larceny, theft of property.
The gun wasn't stolen, if that's what you're talking about. It come back not stolen.
Yeah, I'm just saying there were 2 charges, not just one in that incident.
That's the only thing they got of me was the gun, so I don't know what that even is.
Yeah, well,
They said you stole it.
Yeah, they say it was stolen, but
yeah.
it wasn't stolen. That's the reason I never did go before a judge. When I got there, the officers come and say, hey, the gun come back not stolen.
Did they give the gun back?
No, that was the deal. If I forfeited to the state, this would go away. I said, you can have it. It was given to me. I didn't want to talk to the judge about a gun.
I'd be remiss in my responsibilities if I didn't ask you, when you read that question about filling out any prior convictions and everything, how did you miss that it said, list each law violation of federal, state, or local with which you have ever been charged or arrested, whether convicted or not, including expungement.
I didn't read that part when I went back to get this.
And it's underlined.
Me. Well, that was my mistake. I mean, I have nothing to hide on it. That's what happened. Like I said, the gun was not stolen.
Yeah, I would think you wouldn't have anything to hide if both cases were dismissed.
Right, they would.
All right. I make a motion to approve.
I second. Oh. I'll second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next, we have an application from William Smallwood.
In making his application, Mr. Smallwood failed to list the 1980 charge of conspiracy for distribution of a controlled substance. It was 1980.
Did you just forget about it?
I didn't even think about it. It was dismissed, and I just never entered my mind. You know, the circumstances behind it were that I owned a home and I had a roommate at the time who was an attorney in the city where we lived, and he was apparently buying and selling drugs, but from his law office. And when they arrested him, they arrested me for conspiracy, thinking that I knew something about it or whatever. And of course, after they investigated later, they found out that I knew nothing about it. It was all being done from his law office. And so I was dismissed.
Tell you, the other 2 gentlemen blamed their wives. Now you're blaming the lawyer. I'm really going to take offense.
Well, he just happened to be living with me at the time on a home that I owned, and that was the circumstances behind it. And I apologize for leaving it off, but 39 years ago, honestly didn't even think about it until she called me on the telephone and said, you failed to put something down. I went, oh my goodness, so.
You were convicted of a bank fraud count?
Yes, sir.
And that was in 2007?
Yes, sir.
Hold on, just a couple questions first, please.
Okay.
In federal court?
Yes.
All right, and were you given a sentence and then a period of supervised release?
Yes.
How long was your supervised release?
It was for 3 years, but it was dismissed in 2 years, which was May of 2011.
Okay.
I've served from
It's okay. I just wanted to make sure you were off supervised release for your application.
Yeah, May of 2011.
And on the DUI, do you have an alcohol issue or anything today?
No, sir.
Okay.
I move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next is, we have an application from Kevin Yates.
Kevin Yates?
I'm sorry, but I have to go.
Okay. And I do want to report, I've got to go in about 5 minutes, so we need to.
Okay, we can go
pick
really
things
quick.
up.
In making his application, Mr. Yates failed to include a 1999 weapons charge.
Mr. Yates, what was the outcome of the charge?
Well, apparently I was caught unlawful possession, and I was unaware that that was a charge. It was a traffic stop. They asked me if I had anything. I said yes, because I didn't want to lie. And then I was given a summons in court, and when I went to court, he said it's like a traffic stop, so I assumed for all these years that's all it was, traffic stop.
All right, looks like you were convicted of the charge and paid a court cost and fine.
Yes.
All right. Any other issues, Mr. Fields?
No, sir.
I make a motion to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we've got a number of company applications. Commodore Transportation, BM Limo Service, Three Guys in Bow Ties, Limo, Nashville Limo Trans, New Rose Limo Service, TG Limousine, and Zero Tennessee LLC.
All the companies' applications are in order.
I make a motion to approve all the aforementioned companies en blanc.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We also have a change of address. Well, I'm not really sure. Is it request to change address or request to add a partner?
I apologize. It's actually adding a partner. I've obviously missed that. But it's in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Any other business, Mr. Fields?
Let me share with you, if I can, I have received a letter from Mayor Briley. These are copies of letters that have been mailed out. What I will do is share them with you. I can read them into the minutes, or I can simply tell you what the mayor has said. Which would you prefer?
You can tell us in the summary form what he said, and then we'll put the letter in the minutes. During the meeting, a letter came down from upstairs. In this letter, the mayor has gone to all of the signatories of the applications for SUMDs or scooters. In the letter, he has indicated that there have been many problems, that there's been attempt for compliance, but there are issues related to several things, including parking restriction problems, specific requirements regarding the ADA, age restrictions on drivers, prohibition of riding on sidewalks in commercial areas. He expresses concerns over that, and he ends the letter with this: I have asked the Department of Law to draft legislation repealing the existing scooter regulations and banning their operations. If I do not see a proposal from the operators amending the current ordinances to address the above concerns within the next 30 days, I will ask the Metro Council to approve this legislation. And this was sent to the national office and the local office apparently in just the last little while. I can provide you with copies of the letters. These I need for the record, but I have an email with those letters to you. Thank you, Mr. Fields.
I did not want you to walk out of the meeting and not be aware that, again, during the meeting, this was delivered to us. I have no other business for you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, the only thing I'll say in response is, be sure to let the council know what we had discussed earlier in the meeting about making a number of significant recommendations.
Mr. Fields, I'd also make another request for our June meeting that we get the fire department to provide us accurate data on the number of responses they're making a month and what that cost is, because I noticed in here in the letter it says there's 43 in the month of April. And I think we need to factor that in as the expenses and the public safety.
And we will make sure, again, that information has only been made available in the last several days, and we will make sure that a report is available for you at the June meeting, as well as any other activities that I know along these lines. I'll send information to you as quickly as I'm able to.
I'd love to have somebody from Nashville Fire Department actually address this for the public meeting.
We could do that as well.
You said you needed these letters back?
If I can send you copies of them, I just need those for the records. They're here today.
They're all the same, just one copy.
Yeah, that's what I was, just individual to each company. So what I'll do is get you I'll get it to you. If that's all right.
Already made me Tennessee for what it's worth.
I understand.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.